There we go. Always something. All right, roll call, please.
We are mostly all here except for Mr. Howe, who is delayed by another commitment. He may be joining us if the meeting goes very long.
All right. Approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Support, Salvia.
Okay, moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mr. Howe?
That one's just for the agenda.
Move to the agenda.
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Howe's not here. Mr. Sharlick?
Charlotte, yes.
Mrs. Frederick?
Frederick, yes.
Mrs. Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia?
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Howe? Or Hamel?
Hamel, yes.
Motion carries.
Is it ringing?
It's
It seems to be turned up. And it's picking up the other mics.
Any better?
Fine.
Yep. Well,
Yeah, I think
okay, it only takes a little tiny bit to make it go whack here. All right. Next item is a consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support, Salvia.
Moved and supported. Vote, please.
Mr. Sharlick?
Charlotte, yes.
Miss Frederick?
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia?
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis?
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Hamel?
Mr. Hamel, yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Next item is announcements, Founder's Day Parade and activities, Saturday, May 17th, 2025. Township office will be closed Monday, May 26th, in observation of Memorial Day. And Memorial Day ceremonies will be May 26th as well. Any public comment?
The Memorial Day ceremonies at the cemetery schedule has been adjusted slightly from what they have done in the past. So there's a copy of that. The new schedule, it's just spread out a little bit further, so they're not so short of time between them.
Do you have the hours?
Yes. Okay, 8 a.m. Highland Cemetery, 8:45 a.m. Highland Veterans Memorial Park, 9:30 a.m. West Highland Cemetery.
Okay.
Just a comment is if people are interested in going, they need to be there early and not right at the minute because it doesn't last long. If they go there late, they probably will miss it. So
That has happened. All right. Any other public comment?
I've got something. I just want to say thank you to all the businesses out there. We put out shamrocks for Goodfellows to raise money for Goodfellows, and they brought in over $1,400 that the businesses were able to raise for Goodfellows, which all that money goes back into the community or the fire department. And then also, thanks to our newsletter and things like that, we just in the last month had an increase of like 24 of the green signs, the 911 signs for your addresses, which is awesome to have that influx of people. It makes it a lot easier to see at night where your address is. So the ambulances or police truck, fire trucks can all get to the houses quicker and not have to sit there and search for the addresses on the mailboxes or if they have them on their houses and we can't quite see them because they're different colors, things like that. The reflective signs are crucial. So we've had an influx of those thanks to our newsletter and thanks to the public for stepping up and getting those.
All right. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Yes. Step up to the podium, push the button and it'll light up. And then give your name and address.
Okay. My name is Anne Goulet. I'm with a company called Architect LLC, and my address is actually down in Detroit. My clients are up here in Highland Township, and I'm here today to speak on their behalf. I just sent the group of you and copied the really solid team that you have in your planning and ordinance and land use department regarding the proposed language for zoning ordinances V 034 and 035. I presented some concerns about this to the Planning Commission on Thursday night, expressed serious reservations about the language as currently written. And by way of background for why I said this, I am a licensed architect. I am a development specialist, and I've been working in land use ordinance languages and issues for about 30 years all over the United States with various townships, and including advising the New York City Planning Commission on similar matters in the past. So I'm not going to go through the whole letter. I would encourage you to please read it. The takeaway being that I believe that some land use ordinance professionals need to examine the language there. I don't find it consistent with what one would expect with the modifications to address errors and omissions in an ordinance. So I wanted to bring that matter to your attention in advance of your discussing those items, and to encourage you to please read that letter, and please reach out to me if you'd like, and or use your terrific group of professionals that you have here working for you. And that's all I have to say on the matter. I will note that my clients here in Highland Township are in the agricultural and food industry, and they felt very strongly about the position enough that they asked me to review this on their behalf. So that's all I have to say, and thank you for your attention and time tonight.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on at this point. And the next item is new business. And the first item of new business is it's an introduction for a text amendment Z034 regarding Class C farm market with events. Beth, you want to give a description of that? Microphone.
The ordinance amendment on the Class C farm markets doesn't change anything about Class A and Class B farm markets. Class A are the small roadside stands that you see where somebody puts out eggs and excess, vegetables from their garden. Class B is a farm market with direct sales to the consumer. An example of that is Calasani's on Clyde Road. They have a Class B farm market that's requires a site plan due to the size of the operation. And then Class C is a farm market that allows for events. And the only current example of a Class C farm market operated in the township is Bonadea Farms. And that was approved as a special use, which required public hearings. There is that example and some others that are existing non-conforming uses in the township, such as Huff Tree Farms, Broadview Tree Farms, Lazy J Ranch. This is just setting a framework that would allow them to have events other than specifically agricultural oriented, but would require the planning commission will review the factors about the property that make it appropriate for such events, set some guardrails as far as, the intensity and the frequency, size of the events. It would come to the board for review and approval like any special use. And then annually there'd be a permit, one permit a year where the building official, fire marshal could get in and make sure that any structures that are being used are safe for public occupancy. And then they would just notify us as their events are proposed so that we could provide that information, to public safety. They know what's happening. So it's not a major departure from what we've got. It's a little bit of a relaxation over the rules that we currently have.
And being on the planning commission, another thing that we worked on with this was she mentioned a couple places which were Broadview, Huff's, Schulteis's or Lazy J. And a lot of those are what's called non-conforming uses, basically. So that in the event I think a lot of these people that own these things have kind of looked at this maybe as like a negative thing, but really it's something to get ahead of a problem for them, because if something ever happens to one of their buildings, they will have to sue the township for us to allow them to build it back, basically, because we don't have any ordinances that allow them to have these buildings. They've kind of been grandfathered or whatever you'd call it. So this gives us some framework to bring them into what would be compliance with our ordinance, but also create a path so that if something ever does happen, or they want to maybe expand, or they want to change a usage, that it creates a pathway for us to allow it to happen without going way outside of what reality is, basically.
All right. So this is guess what I'll do is I'll get this rolling here. I'm going to make a motion to introduce text amendment Z034 regarding Class C farm markets with events.
Charlotte, support.
Okay, moved and supported. Any discussion on it?
I have a question.
Sure.
So this is, if you have ARR, agricultural and rural residential, with active agricultural activity, because does JJ Ranch?
No, it could also be a residential zone. It's the agriculture activity that qualifies you, not your zoning classification. And that's all, defined by the Michigan Right to Farm Act.
So crops or,
Yeah.
All right. Any other discussion? All right, then we'll get a vote, please.
Ms. Frederick,
yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Charlotte,
Charlotte, yes.
Mr. Hamel,
Hamel, yes.
motion carries.
Okay, the next item is in regards to proposed text amendment Z035 to modify regulations concerning food trucks. Beth, you want to discuss this one?
This is an ordinance that would regulate, where you can operate a food truck, when you could operate a food truck. Basically, it would take it out of the temporary land use category and place it in the so it'd be as part of an event or part of a permanent site plan. We'd no longer be issuing temporary permits. In other words, if a site plan were submitted that showed a location for a food truck with the proper setbacks, proper paving, all the elements that were required of a standalone business, it could be considered by the planning commission, but no longer are these 90-day permits or extensions.
Okay, now once again, this is an introduction. So in order to discuss, I'll make a motion to introduce the proposed text amendment Z035 to modify regulations concerning food trucks.
Support Lewis.
Okay, discussion. Remember, this is introduction, so but if people have any questions, I'll add something here. In light of the offering of a proposal here for changes in the ordinance, I think that we should be looking at that particular document. And once again, this is just an introduction. So the board will have to make a decision at a later meeting. And I think that I'm not going to say it opens doors or changes things, but this gives an opportunity for the board to be able to look at additional information. So keep that, read it, see how it affects you at a later point. So any discussion?
I have a question. Did the planning commission discuss anything other than 3 days? Did they discuss maybe 6 days or 7 days, 5 days? I'm thinking particularly of the carnival that might go 4 or 5 days?
That's a misreading of the ordinance. It says that if you're a Class C farm market that involves a food truck, we're not going to have a season's worth of food truck there. It's a 3-day at a time on the food truck. The food truck can last the length of time that the event lasts. So if you are writing a permit for 5, 6, 7 days of a carnival, the food trucks are part of the carnival. They're not their own permit. They're part of the carnival's permit.
All right, any other questions? Then we'll vote on the introduction, please.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Salvia,
Salvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Charlotte,
Charlotte, yes.
Mrs. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Mr. Hamel.
Hamel, yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next item. Nick, I'll let you offer the discussion on this one, please.
The next item is discussion on workman's comp. Currently in our current setup and policies, if you injure yourself at work, you go on to workman's comp, you only get the wages that workman's comp compensates you for, which currently right now is right around, depending on how you fall in their algorithm, right around 62% of your wages. As you guys can imagine, that's pretty detrimental to anybody with a single or double income. It's still, you're only making 62% of what you were making prior to that. We worked with the union and back and forth on how to mitigate that, talked to some other townships, Milford Commerce, for instance. They have a program that, so if employees on workman's comp, the township is able to actually compensate them the remainder of what their wages would be. So for instance, if they get $1,000 a month or a paycheck, then, workman's comp pays $620 and we'd pay the remainder $380. They don't require any vacation time while they're on this. Just make it so that way they can, still pay their 20% of their insurance off of that and still contribute to their retirements and things like that, and still bring home the same amount they would be bringing home if they wouldn't have hurt themselves. This was written by our labor attorney and then modified a little bit. We worked on it with the labor attorney to have on there the aspect of if they're eligible or their doctors will allow them to work short-term or light duty, then they'll come in and work the light duty. So that way they're still in the building and doing work and things like that instead of being on workman's comp alone. And then this will cover them for a year's worth of time. So that way, just after the year's time, if they're still off on workman's comp, then it's got to be discussed between the fire chief and the board to see if it's going to be cut back down to the 62% or what the situation will be.
All right.
How, Mr. Chief, how many claims like this have we had in the past?
So far since I've taken over 2, 3 workman's comp claims. One tore her knee, had to have knee surgery during a training. Another one's off for shoulder surgery, fell off a fire truck. We had another one that was bit by a dog on scene doing an ice rescue. His was luckily only 3 days of vacation. It wasn't actually, they just took PTO time, wasn't actually turned into workman's comp for wages wise, but the other 2 have been off almost a year's time between the 2 of them. Grow on, like, bring them in when working on light duty is one way to help them stay involved, but sometimes the doctors won't let it. Like when the guy off on shoulder surgery right now, his doctor still hasn't cleared him for light duty, even though he's on the second surgery now because the first one didn't take or something happened with it. But,
all right. So
I have a question. So short-term disability, workman's comp, how long does that normally last?
It's in the contract. We can take up to, or at 18 months, we can evaluate the situation. I believe that's a time frame where it opens it up to become a long-term type of issue. Once the 18 months is up, then we can meet and discuss what the doctor's recommendations are, if they're going to be a return to work, if they're going to be able to keep their status, if we're going to do what what the process will be for that employee at that 18-month mark.
Do they currently have short-term and long-term?
We do have short-term and long-term.
So how do you determine?
Workman's comp doesn't count under the short-term and long-term.
Oh, okay.
Workman's comp
If you got hurt at work.
is a work injury. Short-term disabilities we had another one that had, that's off right now he had a compressed disc in the back of his neck. He actually had to have surgery that goes to the front. He's off for a period of, I think a few months, but he's on short-term disability
Okay.
because of that.
What's the rest of the people that work at if one of our guys that works in our maintenance department, what happens with them?
They just get 62%.
Right. So, I mean, if we do this I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just talking here. But if we do this for them, then is everybody, I mean, how are we going to, we got to think about this, right? Because now everybody's going to want to get on.
The fire department works on a union agreement, which we don't. So there's a separation to that degree. I mean, we could have employees come to us and say, we want the same deal, but it's up to the board to decide whether they want to engage in that.
What does the sheriff's department have? Do you guys have something like that through your union?
Our short-term is 60%, long-term kicks in at 6 months and is good for a year. After a year, it gets evaluated, and that's either you're going to be on some kind of disability. Workman's comp, in most cases, it's 80% unless we're involved in an accident or we get shot, which is not our fault, then it's going to be 100%.
Yeah. I'm just thinking there's food for thought before we come to the next meeting, because I think we got to think about this, because if whether there's a union or not a union, I mean, there's fair treatment to everybody here or whatever. So I would say that it'd be fair on the township side to treat everybody equally, right? You know, it's going to be hard for me at least to say I'm going to do it for this person and not for that person. So I think that's my thoughts, is we have to look at the ramifications to treat everybody the same. And if we're going to give that to one person, then I find it hard to not say that we're going to give it to other people too.
Well, that could instantly turn into a union conversation too, though.
Well, union or not, I'm just saying, I think there's fair treatment of employees.
I have nothing against the union.
Yes, right. Is that what's going on right now? Is the union for the fire department is trying to push this basically, or
They're the ones that requested it. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, the full-timers the IFF are the full-timers are the ones that are affected by a workman's comp injury the most.
Has the attorney, have you reviewed this at all?
No, she hasn't. No, our labor attorney has.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the township's labor attorney.
Chief, I just have a couple of questions. Do you have any, or have you discussed with other townships that have the same thing in force? Have they ever had any lifetime workers' comp cases? And if so, what decision have they made regarding the supplemental workers' comp? I know workers' comp is supposed to be the ultimate, solution to any work-related injury. So I was curious as to what would happen if, supposedly they have a lifetime case that can't ever go back to work without restrictions.
Right. Depending on the quality of work, basically what they could do. Some people just, if you use firefighting, for example, you might not be able to go back as a firefighter, but you can do a desk job or things like that. So depending on how they do it, some in the fire service aspect of it, some of them have been changed to, they have to move it toward a fire marshal's position. Or for instance, like if Rob couldn't have came back as a firefighter, he had the shoulder surgery, but there's an opening in the maintenance department, and he can do those type of works without being, we can transfer him there. There's also, you determine there of discussions of some sort of severance package possibly, or depending on, it all depends on the injury and how it's worked out from what I'm getting explained. But that's basically what the lawyers are debating on. The severity of it is whether or not there'll be a severance package, whether or not, is it an accident that could have been prevented, not prevented? Is it 100% township's fault, not 100%? All those things play into effect of what that end will be if they can't return to work. So that's kind of one of those things. Once that year or 18 months that's in their contracts up, we have to decide at that point of what route we want to take. And you come up with the labor attorney and the union will probably have their attorney, and for our aspect, or if a personal person would probably have their personal attorney with them to make sure that they get the best end of whatever it is.
Yeah, thank you. Great explanation.
But on that too, is that there's nothing saying that the proposal I gave to you guys is written as a LOA, which is I just lost the name of it now. It's all your fault, Rick. The the letter of understanding between us and the union, which makes it it goes into the union contract without opening it. So it makes it in effect as of whatever date we set it into effect for. And then what will happen is in next contract, unless it's decided to pull it out of there or dispute it, it just goes into the contract like it has been in there the whole time. That's the way letter of understandings work with that. But there's nothing saying too, I could have this completely rewritten also as just a township policy, if that's the way you guys wanted to go with that route too. And it benefits everybody for the township on that aspect. Whatever direction you guys would like to go with that. I guess we just shed some light on the story.
Ghost. That's okay. I'll the shovel do it. There we go. Just leave it. Okay.
So we have the options of doing different things.
Any other questions?
I was going to say, I feel the same way as Grant about taking the next step to provide this to the township employees as well, especially now that we have maintenance employees who are higher risk. And also I would mention that the 62% is kind of what it's supposed to be. It doesn't always work out that much because they bring in other factors to multiply it out. We've seen other people who didn't get 62%, they got less. And so it makes it even harder, especially if their injury drags out for more than just a couple months. So,
Tim,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I just was wanting to ask a quick question about what you just said. Do they take federal and state taxes out of that?
It gets covered. There's between the short-term disability and the workers' comp, there's different rules for how each is handled with tax, but it gets covered one way or the other.
I'm not, to be clear or whatever, I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm saying, I think we need to all think about if you provide it to one person, I think it's pretty, if it's part of a labor negotiation, then I don't understand that part. I need to look into it. Okay. What I'm saying is in the event, number one, as an employer, this is Grant the employer talking here. I personally don't think it's a great idea to give anybody, this is Grant the employer, don't kill me over here, but I don't think it's a great idea to give anybody 100% of their pay personally, because I think it could potentially keep somebody on workman's comp a lot longer than they need to be on workman's comp. Now, that's not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that's Grant the employer side. So
I'll be flat out. That thought has entered my mind.
right. So I
There's
mean,
the aspect, that's why we cut it from, so that in their contract, they can be off for workman's comp for 18 months. We cut this down to just the payout for a year. Just for that.
I just want to keep it in my head. I want to think about that, but because you always want somebody incentivized to go make a little more physical therapy and go do a little more shoulder presses or whatever it is, and I feel, I feel for somebody that's off for workman's comp, but I also realize the reality of the world we live in, So, but with that thought process, that's why I'm saying I'd like to look in between this next time we go to the meeting. I'm going to look into, what the sheriff's department is getting and think about the ramifications of that as far as we don't really have a budget together for that. Right. So 3 people, God forbid, 4 people walk into something and now we've got 4 people and we have to replace those employees. And I just want to make sure that we're thinking the full circle on this deal here, and then I want to understand the labor negotiation side and figure out what that really means. If this is kind of like a rubber stamp type deal thing, or we have some room to, have you talked on this side of this, Rick? Have you been involved with okay. So I just want to feel the ground out before we kind of make any sort of decision, just so we understand fully what we're doing here,
So then you're asking to postpone would be the right term, right?
Well, we're just introducing right now, or what are we doing?
No.
Yeah, I'd like some time to do some digging into this whole thing personally. Not that I think it's a bad idea. Like I said, I just want to, this could be a big commitment. This could be a decent amount of money you know, I just want to make sure that we got all the bases covered here. I think that now that I understand what we're talking about.
The money being spent is already budgeted because we would be paying them their full rate if they were working.
But if somebody's off for a year they're talking, it could be longer if there's some sort of negotiation, an attorney here or something like that. I want to understand, like, if somebody's off for 8 years.
No, it can't go over 18 months.
It can't go over 18 months
No,
whatsoever.
at the 18-month mark, like it goes up for, we look into either whether or not they'll ever be able to return to the job, because it's not beneficial for the department at that 18-month mark. They're protected for 18 months. Like we have to give them the 18 months.
So what happens
A
after
year, they have the 100% pay. Only a year of that do they have the 100% pay, unless the township and the fire chief agree that it's valid reasons that they're still off, things like that, and they want to continue it for the 18 months.
But the township, so in that year period or 18-month period, or so 18 months is what we're talking about.
18 months hits, and then we have to reevaluate, like
So
get
who's
doctors,
we?
like the chief will have to, I'll have to bring it to the town, to you guys, saying this guy's been out for 18 months. He's off for this reason, this injury at work, whether or not it was a accidental or preventative, the chances of it being preventative, things like that. I'll give you everything that's happened. And then we have to decide whether we want to continue allowing him to be on workman's comp, or if it's time to move on to that next step of either some sort of, depending on, like I said, it all depends on the severity of it, of what happened, whether or not we just, it's time to let that employee go, or if we have to compensate them in some way, like a severance package or something like that, or help them get on like permanent disability through the state. And that's what it'll end up being, because they can't return to work.
Yeah, my personal opinion is I'd personally like some time to do some homework and figure out what other places are doing, what the policies are, what best fits, what's going on. I mean, just off the top of my head, my first thought is I think that there's some benefit in having a level below full compensation, just because I think it, and inevitably human, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it would help. I don't know anybody that gets paid really full pay for, and then just gets a stipend and everything for.
I'll throw this in there, just to kind of tweak the way you think. Maintenance employees here at the township are not supposed to be entering themselves into dangerous lines of work. Firefighters, that's the line of work. I mean, if you're doing any emergency stuff, if you're doing EMT stuff, it's all got a danger to it that the rest of us wouldn't experience. And I think that that's kind of a difference here, is that one, this would be paid. Yeah, it's a township expense, but it's actually through a millage. So it's the millage has to cover those costs. If we bring it into the township, that's another thing we can discuss, and we can do a separate thing there. So I think that there wouldn't be any issue really with, if you felt okay with this, to approve this, me signing this letter of agreement here. But it is different than you and I as business people hiring employees, and you probably put some people in some near compromising positions, but as a general rule, you try and keep them safe. Firefighters, you try and keep them safe, but they're going into things that are just inherently dangerous. Now, falling off of fire trucks, I've fallen off a roof, so I can identify with that, but it's still a lot different. So
I have a question. So currently the contract you're asking us to approve says up to a year and then a review. And then you're saying also at 18 months.
18 months is when the current contract states it gets reevaluated to come off workman's comp.
So
if they make it a year and they're still not off comp, we actually can drop them down to the 62% or whatever percentage they're at based off the state's weight or algorithm.
Is there an opportunity to make that 6 months full pay and then review, like for us?
We have the opportunity. You guys, I can take it back to them if you guys come back.
Because a year seems very long, and I understand.
Yeah. I mean, it was with the knee injury. It took I think it was right around a year's time after the surgery and get back to work and full release to go back to work.
Is there
off a little more than a year because he's on his second surgery. Like the first one didn't take. So
is there a law that for the workman's comp doesn't allow us to review them at 6 months?
No, we can set the time frame for where we want. We could set the time frame for a year or 6 months and then do a review if we want to extend it for another whatever period of time.
Okay.
We can set this to, we don't have to do 100%. If you guys choose, you don't think that they don't want to have 100%, they want to do 80, you can do that.
Who's our attorney that reviews this then?
Greg Schultz is our labor
Greg
attorney.
Schultz.
Okay. I wouldn't, I mean, maybe this is getting way over above my pay grade here or whatever, but I mean, I'm not saying I don't like it or whatever. I just like to understand it a little more personally.
That's, I mean, as I said, I'll answer any questions you got. I worked through, we and him he wrote this and gave it back to me and discussed it with.
So the attorney for the township did?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I have discussed with the department heads to get authorization to even go
So
to
he
the
works for
attorney
us or he
about
works for the union?
it. He works for us.
Okay.
I
So the
did,
union put out a request. This is, in essence, the comprehension of what the union was asking for. He wrote it in a way that could come back to us so that we could approve that as an amendment to the contract, to the union contract. So
Yeah, but it was his idea to drop it down to a year instead of leaving it at the 18 months. Things like that.
Yeah, like I said, my thing is I'd like to personally, I can vote if we need to vote or whatever, but I'd like to put some tentacles out and understand what other areas are, because is this something that they're trying to do like mass basically? Like, is this something that other communities have right now? We just don't?
And Tammy also contacted Commerce. Commerce does it. They pay 100%. Milford pays 100%. Not sure if they still pay them vacation time. We're not offering them any PTO acquiring while they're doing it. Who was the other one we contacted?
for me, it was just Commerce and Milford. I do want to mention that. So when the employee is on workman's comp, they are under supervision from our workers' comp provider, and they have requirements as far as seeing the doctor, getting evaluations done throughout that process. And so the workers' comp provider is not going to allow someone to stay on there if they don't have a medical reason to be on there. If we were to say, put something in the policy, it says we were going to review it after 6 months. Well, I don't know what the criteria would be for us to continue it, how you would write that into the contract to say, well, if we really like you, we'll let you go for another 6 months.
I don't know the point of letting us, because I mean, I really don't want to review that personally, because you have to bring an employee in here and tell them, yeah, no way.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know the review part. I just.
I want to ask something because I can't get a word in here because you guys are always talking. Wild thought, nationwide, is there any program that firefighters might get together and have an insurance plan to take care of catastrophic problems like this? That communities could buy up.
It's normally why you get the Aflac short-term disability, things like that. But this is,
I mean, that would make more
workers' comp is
sense.
a little different too.
Well, the problem is it's not the firefighters.
Well,
They would receive the insurance, but somebody has to pay for it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's going to be the township.
well, I'm just thinking if there'd be something with concept to have a national policy for catastrophic injuries that would pay for people.
Well, here's another element to this is that I could put out a request for employment for just about anybody in our facility and have a replacement within days. Try and get another firefighter. And that's where this is that kind of a scenario where you don't want to lose what you have, and we lose enough of them to training them and they move on to another fire department. So it's the commodity is rare, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm sure they know that as individuals, but anyways,
Now, I mean, since we started talking here, I'm a lot more filled in. So, I mean, a lot of the other communities are offering this. That's a big factor for me, obviously, or just, I didn't know the reasoning behind it. Right.
Right.
And I can see that, I don't know that if we come and look at it at different ranges of time, if that's going to help, because I don't really want to be figuring out where somebody's shoulder hurts too much or not. I didn't understand that so when you say the workman's comp provider, is that the doctor or what?
So with workman's comp, we've got to use you want to explain the workman's comp aspect of it. Sorry. Wasn't trying to jump in on you.
So it's insurance policy. So we pay Michigan Municipal League for our workers' comp coverage. And they have administrators that are covering these, and they're going to require medical reviews every so often. The people that we've had that have gone through it, the doctor's reports are going to the workers' comp provider and being evaluated along that process. It's, I know in the old days, people would say, oh, there would be fraud and everything. I don't think there's a lot of room for that anymore.
So they're the people that are paying the 62% or something.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like, so the line item, for instance, for Rob, who's off right now, he's been off since last year. So as of this year, my line item for his wages I haven't spent a penny of it because everything comes out of workman's comp. So theoretically at the end of the year, if he was off for this whole calendar year, I would still have his yearly wages in that line item because it all would come out of the workman's comp.
So
aspect.
basically the way I'm understanding then is the person that would decide whether he's qualified to go back to work would be our workman's comp insurance person.
Right. Yeah. Like right now we have a contractor and set up with Concentra,
Uh-huh.
which is basically a workman's comp doctors.
Right.
They've got a series of doctors and things like that. They can do the blood work. They line them up with physical therapists that are vetted through them, all that type of stuff to get everything in. The only time you won't use those doctors is if their doctor and the patient is under agreement that they need a different specialist that they can't provide, or that their specialist isn't really knocked out for. Then they'll go outside of Concentra. But other than that, everything is authorized through Concentra. They do all that stuff. And that's for the whole township, not just the fire.
Beth,
department.
how much do you deal with this quite a bit in your line of work?
Actually, not right now, but I used to be a workers' comp claims adjuster for 13 years, but that was a long time ago. A long time ago. But anyway, I think you explained it extremely well, that it's really up to the physician. That's the bottom line, to determine that employee is back to, 100% of their prior physical capabilities before they allow them to go back to work. So they can release a patient, an employee to go back to work to their prior job, or they can release them to go back to work with restrictions. The restrictions can be permanent. They can be temporary. So really, I don't think, like you're saying, that was a very good explanation, Tammy and Chief, because it's really not up to us. It's not up to the employer. It's up to the workers' comp administrators or adjusters that handle the claim.
Well, I've been talked around to the beginning, so I'm good to vote on it, and I would be in support of it if we need to.
Okay, so we're gonna have a motion made. So we should have done this a long time ago, but
Oops.
yeah.
I'll make a motion that we accept the letter of agreement between the Charter Township of Highland and the Highland Township Professional Firefighters Union Association of Firefighters, Local 5267, as presented.
Well, add that approving the supervisor sign the agreement.
We're going to approve that the supervisors sign the agreement.
Okay,
Second, Frederick.
okay, moved. And seconded, vote please.
Mr. Salvia,
Sylvia, yes.
Mrs. Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Mr. Charlotte,
Charlotte, yes.
Ms. Frederick,
Frederick, yes.
Clerk Flowers votes yes. Mr. Hamel,
Hamel, yes.
motion carries.
Okay, on that note, meeting is adjourned.